Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about protecting your family, a preparedness plan for immigration emergencies, and the documents that you need in the just in case, and things to just consider. My name is Ruby Powers, your go-to immigration attorney with Powers Law Group. I'm board certified, been practicing 16 plus years as an immigration attorney and did immigration work even before that. And let's go ahead and dive right in. So your family really matters, and so it's important to have these documents and everything prepared as much as possible. We have a lot of uncertainty happening right now, and the best thing we can do is to have things organized in just in case situations. So that'll help give you a peace of mind. That's something you can control about for children, financial assets, and other records and documentation, and being able to act swiftly in a calm setting in times of some type of abrupt change. So one of the things that we're telling lots of people is to have a scan, know where your documents are, from passports, know when their expiration dates, the birth certificates, marriage license, death certificates, divorce decrees. Have them, have them all in order, have them labeled, have them scanned, know where they are in case you needed them to be able to get them to an attorney right away to help from maybe a bond packet or something along those lines. In the preparation of collecting all of these things, you can also see when are the expiration dates, and if there's any, do you have the certified copies of these documents, or do you need to go collect them? Even myself, I have a lot of these, mostly in about 2 different places, maybe 3 if you count the safe. But for the most part, having these things that you know where they are, but then somebody else in your family having them is really important. So we're also going to mention like caregiver authorization documents as well. So what I would suggest is to know where they are physically in a safe place, and also have them a digital version that's labeled properly. If you don't have these things organized, then it's going to take a really long time when there's an immense time of need. And we know, I mean, for those, I'm based out of Houston, there's floods, there's hurricanes, there's things like that. You want to be able to not have to lose your documents just because of a natural disaster. So you want to make sure that you have that updated list of emergency numbers, and I've already really built a relationship with an immigration attorney or support. You want to be able to have emergency contacts with your children's school, and to, like, for example, my kids' school, I usually have a couple of my relatives and maybe a neighbor or a friend, but what are the documents that your school requires, and being as a point of contact or someone who can pick up your children. Look at that, think about that, and make sure that's up to date. Usually you have to update it every year anyway. And also be aware of your consular contact of your country of origin. If a person were to be detained, they're going to need to know at least a phone number to call and who's that person, like their life support, phone a friend, emergency contact, because very likely their phone will be confiscated and they won't. And I mean, a lot of times people don't even have numbers memorized. They just have it all here on the phone, right? So think about those things and be able to have it readily available. So for childcare and guardianship plan, have a trusted guardian for your children. It doesn't mean that they're going to take over forever. It could just mean that they are the caregiver temporarily. There's so many different ways for it to be put into effect. But it's important for them to know, medical treatment, medication, things like that. And that it's important the child knows who the guardian is as well, and that they feel comfortable with that individual. Some people have suggested that maybe there's somebody who might not have status who's your guardian, but you probably should also find somebody who does have more of a secure status, like U.S. citizen, legal permanent resident, as well. And you can do lots of things, like you could go into effect immediately, but only show it when needed and have it scanned and ready to go. But these things take time. They require thought. They require communication, documentation, signing, usually witnessed, scanning. It's not something you want to do in a split second. You really want to have these things figured out. It's going to make everything better for everyone. Um, You're going to want to have some funds saved up because if an individual in your family were to be detained and they were to be put through like a bond process or something like that, you would need funds to pay for the immigration attorney. You would need funds potentially to pay for the bond. And the way immigration bonds work is you have to pay the full amount. It's not just like a portion like in criminal bonds. So you need the whole thing. So you're going to be needing to be prepared. I mean, I don't bonds can be all over the place from like maybe $3,000 to maybe $10,000 right now, but it could depend. I mean, if there's any aggravating factors like escalated criminal matters, it can go even more. But then legal, it can really depend on where you're talking about and if it's just for the bond or if there's going to be additional fees later on, which there will be once you get out. But again, so no one's able to guarantee that you'll be able to get out on bond or parole as well. There's been a lot of cuts to the nonprofits, unfortunately, so there really isn't a lot of other extended relief, and there are no court-appointed, I mean, in most parts of the country, court-appointed legal services for immigration court. You want to make sure that everybody who has a passport, it can, now, let me say one more thing with that expression. Now, sometimes if you were applying for asylum from your country, you might not have applied for a passport. So in that situation, if that is your case, I would say it's a case-by-case basis and you should have a consultation to evaluate that. But if you have children that were born in the US, I would say at least have them have their passports because of the process. Children under 18 are only allowed a passport in the US for 5 years at a time. I mean, 5 years goes by fast. I think I've already applied 3 times for my kids. I don't know. And they're not even 12 or 14 or something like that. So anyway, make sure that you also need to have, if one of the parents can't go, they have to sign a notarized statement. And so consider all of those different factors. There's also a lot of conversations about getting dual citizenship for children to have more means to travel. Just anecdotally, the Mexican consulate has been inundated with a lot of applications for dual citizenship, more than ever before. And so it could take a little bit longer if that was something of interest. Apply early. The summertime is when a lot of people, Americans, apply just for travel purposes. So don't wait till the last minute. And keep them in a secure, easily accessible place. Make sure there's a scan of the passport so that you could get, if you needed to, with the signature. Now, we obviously say to people to evaluate your immigration relief options as much as possible and to have that consultation to be able to see what your eligibility is. And there's so many different options, right? But it has been reduced over time with less legal options. And so have a consultation. That's like the biggest point, biggest takeaway. Have a consultation. For us, the ones we're having, we're going to have some documents on hand. We're going to be able to talk with them. We're going to make a strategy. We're going to talk to the individual in need. If later that individual might be detained, unfortunately, and can't talk to us as easily, at least we already have had that contact. And so those are things that we consider and being able to communicate. So making sure that you have know where the bank accounts are, credit cards, vehicles, real estate investments, child support, savings plans. I mean, it's like a full-on estate planning project. I recently was doing some of this for other reasons, but it was a lot of work. Just having everything in one place. And sometimes as life progresses, you forget certain things. Oh, that account over there, or oh, that account, I forgot about that one. The other thing that we find is that people don't always communicate to everybody in the family or the spouse as to where everything might be. Maybe not necessarily because they're hiding anything, but maybe just because they don't or whatever. And there's a lot of two-factor authentication in documentation and accounts. So sometimes even if you know the email and the password, you might not be able to get into it because it's tied to a phone number or something like that. My uncle unexpectedly passed away a couple months ago, and my aunt thought she knew the password to the phone, but she didn't right away, and a lot of things were tied to that. And so a lot of that experience, they were able to figure it out, but for that initial time, it caused a little angst and anxiety because a lot of things were tied to the phone. And so these are the types of things that we don't really think about until it's too late. And so that's why I wanted to do today's video webinar, to make sure that people know about this. And we did also talk about this in in Spanish, with an estate planning attorney. And the other thing about the financial assets is there's a lot of tax implications into what you might do. So that is not in my purview as an immigration attorney, but you definitely want to talk to a estate planning attorney and a CPA about these things, depending on what your status is and what you might be doing. So please, 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 if you have a lot of assets, you also want to make sure that you're thinking about these things to protect those for your family. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention is, like, the kids pick up on things. They are hearing your conversations. They can hear the stress in your voice. They know that they see the stuff in the news. Like, they are way smarter than you think. And I mean, that you're smart, so they're your kids, right? But they are picking up on a lot of this stress vicariously. And so you want to have an open conversation, but you want to make sure that you tell them that you do have a plan, and depending on their age and appropriateness, you want them to be able to understand these things. If one of the family members is detained, being able to communicate with them, depending on their age and their level of maturity of what's going on. But it can cause a lot of emotional angst. And of course, you are trying to help them, guide them through this difficult time. It can be hard to think, what do you say? Do you tell them the truth? Do you not tell them the truth? And but it's important that you are honest within means of their age. If you don't tell them anything, and then one day you're not there when they come home, then that's going to be more traumatic. So please think about these things. I mean, discuss something with one of your religious leaders or your therapist. Look into it before everybody's well-being, because there is some very stressful, unprecedented times, and making sure that people know the important contact information. So signs of distress in the children, and I mean, we could see this in adults as well, like trouble sleeping, mood swings, withdrawal, poor school performance, irritability, frequent sadness. So please be aware of this for your children, and be mindful of it. If you are pursuing a cancellation of removal case, having documentation of your child's mental health, it would be evidence about the hardship to them if they're a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident. But for the most part, what matters more, I think, is that they are being taken care of, and of their mental health needs. And so please be aware of that. Okay, how do you find a detained family member? Well, there's ICE's online detainee locator, and this is a website that you can just Google on ICE online detainee locator, and you'll find it. You either need to have their name and their full name, date of birth, and country of origin, or you need to have like their name and their A number, but almost nobody knows the A number. So then you can just try to find them. Now, again, if they disappeared or they called and said, we're getting detained, it might take a day or two. Again, we are in this unprecedented times. So they could be relocated to lots of different places. I understand that time of panic of when they're not communicating, their phone, their ID, their items have been confiscated, and they are in a very likely in a holding situation, cell, detention, or being processed to be relocated somewhere else. What we've also seen is that people have been moved around the country. We also heard really horrible situations where people were completely just deported to other countries. And so I know that this is a great fear, especially when somebody is not in constant contact. When a person gets to put in a detention facility, sometimes what happens is they might be relocated to another location within the detention facility, and they might not be able to communicate while they're being relocated. So sometimes it's hard to know when to panic and when not to. It's also good to have communication with the consular officials for assistance, and yes, know that they might get transferred to different facilities. So I mean, this is sort of an interesting situation if ICE holds information. but generally I haven't found that to be the case yet. It's more a matter of looking at it's just a matter of processing time. When you do have an attorney, everyone has a deportation officer for the most part, as long as they're not, in expedited removal, which will be very swiftly processed. But if a person's detained, they're usually assigned as a deportation officer. It can be difficult to get a hold of them, but that's another thing that we do as an attorney of record when we become one. So there's these red cards that the community's been passing out, and it's basically just key points about knowing your rights and what you can say, what you shouldn't say, and just being aware of and we've also been talking a lot in the Know Your Rights about judicial versus administrative warrants. But it is important not to just have it in your pocket, but to memorize it, do some role playing where you know how to use it, in what capacity, and that you have a grasp of that contact. Okay, moving on. So your rights in your home, you want to stay calm. Don't open the door unless it is a signed judicial warrant. It'll say district court. It'll have a signature by a judge of a date, time, or range of time. And you want to make sure that you ask to see in the window underneath, that you don't just open the door, because what they were doing was just having administrative warrants, not judicial warrants. The thing is, you don't have necessarily you want to request to speak with an attorney, but you really want to make sure that you already have a connection with an attorney so that you can easily call them and get on their calendar, especially if it's a time of emergency. But there's a lot of activity happening right now, so it's important to be prepared. I'd say make sure that you reviewed all the documents that you need to have and the steps your family would go through, and having updated emergency contacts. And there are a lot of different resources out there, like ACLU, and ILRC and some other ones, ALA, for example. But I mean, we highly suggest having basically have already made a contact, even if maybe they're not hired, but they are aware of your documents, about your situation. There's the one other really big thing I wanted to talk about is there's two numbers. One of them is 2 and one of them is 10. And 2 is if you have the expedited removal. If you've been found within 100 miles of the border and 2/3 of the country live within 100 miles of the border, then you want to be able to demonstrate that you've been here more than 2 years. If not, then you could be expeditedly removed, which means that you don't see a judge and it's a swift deportation order. That's a huge concern because expedited removal was expanded only a couple of months ago. The second scenario is the 10 years, which is cancellation of removal. And this is where you've been here 10 years or more. Has 3 prongs. The first is 10 years, and you usually want to show that with taxes. The second one is good moral character. That's usually the absence of criminal record. And the third is extreme and unusual hardship to a U.S. citizen, legal permanent resident, spouse, parent, or child. Now, even the hardest part is usually the hardship to prove, but some people don't have all the evidence readily available. So what we're telling people is to have that evidence collected, from the taxes to the birth certificates to marriage license, bank accounts, all of that already ready, organized by year, scanned, ready to rock and roll if you need to give that to an attorney for a bond, or to be prepared so that they can prepare the bond, or a stay of deportation. The other thing to note about that is that they will ask you, when did you last enter? And so it's important to know what that date would be, because sometimes people forget, and you need to have been here 10 years or more at the time of getting an NTA, notice to appear, or a criminal matter had started that would be a qualifying matter that would stop the clock, as we say in law. So those are some big takeaways. There are also the guardianship, the power of attorney, the medical power of attorney. These are some documents that are important to have. And we've done some different webinars on these types of things. And so we want to make sure that you can call us. We can help you on those types of things. But have those conversations, be prepared, know what you would do in a situation of uncertainty, of a family member being detained and needing to move quickly. My name is Ruby Powers. We have a few other attorneys. Everyone speaks Spanish. You can always call us at 713-589-2085. You can schedule a consult online. You can find us on all these different social media platforms. And we also have a newsletter that goes out in English and Spanish every other week. There's a lot of change happening. Just find your attorney before you need one. Have that peace of mind to know what you're eligible for and what you would do in a different situation. And I hope this was helpful for you. If it was, please let us know. Feel free to give us a review or tell someone else and share it with them so that they know. And let us know what type of content you'd like to keep hearing so that we can keep providing that to you. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe.